Welcome back to Cyber Talks from Bare Metal Cyber. I'm Dr. Jason Edwards, and today we're diving into one of the toughest puzzles in security, phishing in the age of agentic AI. My guest is Craig Taylor, a fellow CISSP and a 30-year cybersecurity veteran. Craig co-founded CyberHoot back in 2014 to help small and mid-sized businesses and managed service providers raise their cyber literacy. Over the years, he's led cybersecurity organizations in web hosting at CSE, in finance at JP Morgan Chase, and in manufacturing at Vistaprint. He also runs a consultancy that has provided virtual CISO services to more than 50 companies across many industries. Craig is also a seasoned communicator and community builder, a Toastmaster, a Rotarian up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and a dedicated fundraiser for cancer research, having raised more than $150,000 riding in the Pan Mass Challenge over the past 11 years. Craig, welcome to Cyber Talks.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you, Jason. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Awesome. So agentic AI. So, tell us a little bit about what that is and what, and what we're dealing with right now and the threats we have. I know in the pre-session, we talked about some of the recent issues that had come up with it. And of course, AI is, the topic everywhere. And there's, of course, a huge fear about AI being used as a weapon, which I think we're starting to see, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. So I'm sure everyone listening to this knows what AI is and has been using it to help craft difficult conversations, emails, things of that nature. We certainly use it at CyberHoot to produce videos that are appealing to the end user population, trying to teach them cyber literacy skills. But agentic AI is really the holy grail of all these different products and platforms. It's a step removed from general intelligence, artificial general intelligence. It's basically the ability for AI to go and carry out a series of steps, instructions, research and actions and activities, doing so autonomously without direct human oversight. And that is really what we saw happen recently in the last 10 days. Anthropic published an article, which we'll be going through some slides on today, that they interrupted or thwarted a series of attacks that were going on with a jailbroken version of their Claude Code AI platform. When I say jailbroken, that needs to be explained. We've probably heard of jailbreaking your phone, right? You can install apps from the App Store on your iPhone. But if you want to install your own apps, you kind of have to jailbreak it or get it registered through the official channels of Apple, and that can be difficult. On a computer system, if you break into the root account or the administrative account, you're sort of getting a little bit closer to jailbreaking, but it's not really the same thing. It's basically having carte blanche to do whatever you want with the tool. And a jailbroken AI turned into an agentic attack methodology is what we're going to cover today. It's very scary, actually.
Well, I think, AI can do so much. Allowing it to go out and do its own thing sounds a whole bunch of like, well, are we getting to Skynet? Is that the next step, right? Just go out and take over the world. Let me know when you're done. Okay, cool. So yeah, so how would you like to get started? Do you want to go ahead and you want to bring up the slides?
Yeah, let's do that. Thanks, awesome. Jason.
Thanks.
All right, so Phishing in the Age of AI was the original presentation I was putting together, and then this article dropped from Anthropic, specifically this one, disrupting the first reported AI-orchestrated cyber espionage campaign. Espionage sounds a little bit softer than what it was. They were, what they think, they tied it back to Chinese nation-state actors. Attribution is often difficult, but in this particular case, I think they were pretty accurate. And they said, hey, the agentic AI was jailbroken and orchestrated multi-steps of an attack methodology framework. When you do a pen testing as a white hat hacker, Jason, you do reconnaissance, then you do breach, and then you do land and expand, and then you maintain your access over time. All of these different steps, they turn the agentic AI bot to doing, right? Going out and nmapping and scanning all of the ports and protocols that were open from the internet on these companies, scanning social media to identify who works at the company so you can send them very specific spear phishing attacks for them to click on to breach the network and get them to run something, or to steal credentials to get you in, etc., or to even steal the session credentials for email and so on and so forth. So this then got picked up, because when you think about, if you're watching this industry of AI and you think about, artificial general intelligence, agentic agents is the step before that. No one's convinced there's a tool out there that really orchestrates a lot of steps in sequence. But this was then picked up by a lot of different fronts. I'm sorry, did I step out of that presentation? One second.
It's okay. We'll
go back into slideshow here. Okay, so I can just do it here. So this was picked up, world's first large-scale cyber attack executed by AI. They think the Chinese was the threat actors behind it. Here's Fortune covering it. The next day, Anthropic says it disrupted. Palo Alto, a big cybersecurity firewall vendor, said AI agents are here, so are the threats. So this is a company that's hoping to build AI into their defensive tools. And that's one of the takeaways from the article on Anthropic. If hackers are going to be using this to attack us, we need to start using agentic AI agents to defend us. This came across my desk today, Jason. I used ChatGPT 5 to create a phishing simulation, including the exact wording of an email. And it generated a perfect example for us. And it's insane. Just tell Chatty it's a simulation and it will play along. So much for the big guardrails there, right? If you just say it's a simulation. So the point here is agentic AI is about to make all of our cybersecurity jobs a lot more difficult, but it could also make them easier and more effective as well. Did you have a question?
Yeah, Craig, let me go back to one thing just real quick. You said too, why would the Chinese use Anthropic? Do you know? Like, why aren't they using their own homegrown models or their services?
Well, probably two reasons. There are geofencing security protective measures that might not allow a deployment outside of the US from even talking to the networks they were targeting. That's possible. Anthropic is a local US company, so communications from it to different networks would probably be allowed over, coming through the Great Firewall of China. I'm not sure exactly. I'm thinking maybe it was an exercise of research too. What can we get the other tooling to do if we were able to jailbreak it? And they were. So I don't know that we had a really good answer to that question yet. I think time will tell why they used Anthropic, probably because they could.
And there's probably a little bit of, let's smear a company while we're doing it, right? So, I mean, Anthropic's obviously not getting good PR this week. So
no, but they were very good about releasing their report. That's a publicly facing report, and they released it even though it was egg on their face. They said, listen, this has happened and you need to know about it. And it wasn't just one company targeted. I think there was like 30 companies targeted based on what we could tell. So what can we learn from this article about Anthropic's agentic AI attack report? There were really three key takeaways that came from this that cybersecurity professionals need to be aware of. Agentic AI in this particular instance ran a multi-step attack campaign just about autonomously, right? 80 to 90% of its decision-making was handled by the Claude agents without decision points by the hacker. There was about 5 or 6 decision points they called that the hackers were called upon. The first couple were, who are we attacking and how badly do you want us to attack them? The rest were done internal, and then the hackers would check in and say, yeah, continue and do this or do that. But largely it was without human oversight. So think about that. The AI agent at AI speeds was doing research, recon, targeting, content generation, and execution. That's really fast. Like, not single-threaded human hacker one at a time, talking thousands of things going on all in parallel, right? It changes the game a little bit. Then
it shortens the kill chain, right? It shortens that kill chain.
Yeah, I suppose so. If you have agentic AI agents watching for this stuff and you see in unhuman-like speeds of things happening, then you might be able to more easily identify it and disrupt it, right? There's certainly hallmarks of that kind of thing going on. Think of CAPTCHA for attacks, right? This is not possible for a human attacker. We're going to shut it down immediately. But you're right, because the other part of the report said agentic AI was increasing the speed, the scale, and the precision of the attacks. The agentic agents were scanning public networks and then went inside internal sources to find unpatched systems, which, God forbid, we all have those in our networks, right? Then personalized email outreach and crafted perfect communications. And then what was really scary is adapting mid-campaign as it learned. Remember 10 years ago when Gary Kasparov played IBM's Deep Blue in a chess match? And I think they split the first two. And then Gary said, there's no way I'm going to beat it ever again because it's learning from my best secrets of chess and I can't beat it anymore. Well, adapting mid-campaign about what kind of communications clicked on and what weren't, and then re-attacking is kind of a scary thought, right? What it basically told us in this report was that an entire team of attackers tuning things can be replaced by a single attacker with agentic AI bots, right? So it's a force multiplier in the extreme in the offensive attack capabilities. The third thing that the report from Anthropic taught us was that AI enables more strategic, self-improving, and coordinated attacks. So if you're able to jailbreak an AI and create these agents to work autonomously, and you can create the scripts for them to, take step 1 reconnaissance and pass it to step 2 attack, and step 3 break in, and step 4 land and expand, and step 5 evade detection, it's going to have this ability to do that at speeds we've never seen before that humans can't keep up with unless we have perhaps agentic AI defensive agents, right? So it's basically a Star Wars scenario. Remember in the 80s and 90s, it was like, why are we going to spend millions and billions of dollars arming space? It's just everyone has to do it if someone does it, so we should not do it at all. Or ballistic missiles or nuclear missiles, that sort of thing. So what was once required a multi-stage process executed over weeks and months by individual or groups of hackers can now be executed by agentic AI autonomously in timings that are measured in hours, right? Possibly minutes, but hours is what we felt safe saying. So this is what we've learned from this report. And any security professional listening to this is going to, wake up at night going, oh my God, what are we going to do? This is a bad thing. So I'm going to pivot now from these attacks, right? When the goal of this attack is to break into a company and then land and expand, but how you break in remains the same. And if you will, we'll go to Verizon's data breach report on this next slide and give you some statistics from them. Verizon stated in their 25-year history of releasing attack summaries for the last year, they do an annual report. I'm sure most of you have listened and read these at least once. In 2023, they did a 20-year retrospective, and they said, listen, over the last 20 years, the attacks have remained largely the same. Phishing is number one, because humans are the weakest link in any cybersecurity program typically, followed closely by credential theft, and then a distant third in the past was 0 days and vulnerability exploitation. Now, the last report was interesting from Verizon in 2025. The one covering 2024, released this year, said, the vulnerability exploitation went up to about 20%. That's the highest it's been in a long time. And it's tied back to a bunch of things. There were a lot of flaws found in SSL VPNs, and those were exploited to get in the front door, right? Because most SSL VPNs are providing internet-enabled services into an internal network. Hot topic, very lucrative if you can break into them. And almost all the vendors have had problems there, to the point where I don't recommend using them anymore. I would say IPsec or even an internet-based VPN tunneling service is better. But it's still the number one, followed by credentials and exploitations as 2 and 3. So what happens then? Social engineering accounts for the largest share of breaches, which are tied back to, in most cases, phishing emails, but there's also smishing and quishing and vishing, voice-based for financial breaches. Voice-based phishing is really big, and we should talk at some future date about deep fakes and how to protect yourself with safe words and things of that nature. But as much as 60% of the breaches, according to the Verizon data breach report, are tied to human elements. Now you can go and look at online and find reports from IBM and others that say as close to 80 to 90% of breaches are tied back to human error. But then you're starting to get into, well, they forgot to patch and that's human error and other things. The point is, it's a big number. And these are the areas we need to focus on, is preparing our staff for social engineering attacks via email, right? Social engineering and email is still the number one. Why? Because it works and it's very easy to conduct. So AI sharply increases the speed, targeting, and success rate of phishing. And we get into this. Oh, here's a statistic from the report: doubling of synthetically generated malicious email content over the last 2 years, doubling. But with AI, I'm sure that could double some more. And we're just going to begin getting flooded with very personalized, very enticing, specific to, we were talking before the call, Jason, about we both like hockey. What if you got a very interesting, hockey email because of this conversation generated by AI that you wanted to click on? You're going to have to ask yourself, why would this just show up out of the blue in my mailbox? It's very highly tailored to my interests. That's going to be a hallmark of some of the attacks we're facing.
Well, you could see a future where we just don't click anything.
Yeah, that's
Just
probably
remove
true.
links from all emails. Yeah.
I see it. I don't see that happening, Jason, because I think email is communications is the fundamental human trait. We all want to be connected. We all want to share ideas, and we all want to consume ideas. So clicking and email communications aren't going away. But I see a future where AI gets involved and can more easily identify and spot, typo squatted domain names than anyone else. Think about your password manager. It would never put your password into the wrong website, right? So why couldn't we take that and extend it to an AI defense tool that protects us from phishing emails? It's just a matter of days, weeks, months before that happens, in my opinion. Let's go down a little history lesson, right? How many people remember the old phishing from 20 years ago with spelling mistakes, generic greetings, and, I am a prince from some foreign country trying to get money out of my country. Will you help me? Right? This is that little picture in the old IBM, keyboard and monitor here, right? Please help me. Well, those years are almost nostalgic for me now. I wish we had those, because those were so easy to identify. Today, we have AI crafted messages that are personalized, automated, and attacks at scale. They can target every person in your company all at once with things that they each individually really like, with perfect grammar, tone, even the translation tools that start a message in any foreign language, turning it into English, turns it into regionally specific language, right? The AI tools, they know how people talk all over the world, especially English, because it has the most training materials to say, oh, an English speaker would never say that French term, so let's turn it into the English equivalent of it, and its grammar and tone is perfect. Personalized context, sophisticated iterations on social engineering. This is, not just these on steroids. It's like a different world entirely. So what do we do? What are we going to do? If we know that AI has transformed phishing from obvious scams into highly convincing personalized attacks that only need to fool one employee in our company, I bet you everyone working at Jaguar, or not working at Jaguar because they can't produce any vehicles right now because they're down from a massive attack, is wondering about this one employee. Who let the hackers in that encrypted our entire flat network? Shame on you for having a flat network, but that's a different story. So if the threat landscape has fundamentally changed, and I would argue, Jason, we've had a watershed moment. That watershed moment means a tipping point where things went from before this point to after this point. You look at historical events like landing on the moon. That's a tipping point for space travel, or the 9/11 attacks, or what have you, the advent of AI and ChatGPT. Well, with agentic AI, we've had a watershed moment because the AI and computers can execute multiple steps in a row, targeting people. We need to up our game on user education to spot and avoid these things until we have the agentic AI defensive mechanism on our inbox. So let's talk about the human factor and what we know empirically, then pivoting to phishing, right? The topic here was phishing in the age of agentic AI. Sticks for clicks doesn't work, right? Using attacks and punishing attacks and shaming people. Let's start with the statistics, though. That Verizon data breach report, I already covered it, but 60% of incidents tied to a human element as of last year. And you could argue more or less, but it's still a huge, huge number. And it's always the first foray of breaching a network is going into it. But what we know from these 3 studies over the last 12, say 5 years, 4 years, 2021 was the first one, findings from a large scale long-term study. This was at the University of Zurich, the first one. And they concluded that fake email phish testing had an unexpected effect of making end users more likely to click rather than less likely to click. The next one here, we've been doing phishing all wrong, dark reading. This was presented at the Black Hat conference here in 2025. It's a very recent study. The dark reading was a commercial website report or overview shared, helped crafted by the researchers themselves, but they have a formal article in the peer-reviewed journal about this. They concluded that all the fake email phish testing we do and the embedded training that comes after it doesn't work. They only saw a 1.7% difference between a control group who got no training and all the different groups that got various kinds of training with fake email phish testing. One of their conclusions was the end users that failed phishing tests were assigned videos of 15, 20 minutes, whatever. They spent an average of 10 seconds watching the video assigned to them. And then they left. Their eyes were not paying attention. They weren't listening. They were just frustrated and unengaged, apathetic about learning how not to be tricked by these fake email messages. So it just doesn't work. The last study was recently published really just a few weeks ago, saying that when you do training that is tied to failure, meaning if all you do to train your users is fake email phishing tests and the only users that get trained are the ones that fail, then the ones that pass will eventually fail too, because they're not getting any training on this. The only time they got trained was if they failed, right? So there's just so many failure points on this. And what we know from psychology and education and dog training and parenting, I would add, is that punishment doesn't build or change behaviors, right? If anybody's a parent, just imagine your child having a temper tantrum and you deciding, well, the way to stop this is to give a spanking, right? Maybe that's 100 years ago approach, but today that just wouldn't work. It's not going to help the child in any way, shape, or form. Or let's say you're a dog trainer and you put a shock collar on your dog to keep them in your yard. And anytime they get too close to the electric fence, they get zapped, right? Well, that might be okay on a dog, but what if there's a rabbit or a squirrel across the yard, across the electric fence? Or God forbid, a skunk, right? Your dog's going to go through that little zap and say, the hell with it. I don't care about the zap. That's really attractive to me. Well, punishment doesn't change behaviors. If you use positive reinforcement, though, that's what changes behaviors, because people engage more, they learn better, and they adopt better defensive behaviors when the training they receive positively reinforces the good things they're supposed to do more of. And when it's paired with encouragement and gamification, all of those things combine to get engagement over apathy, to get interest and the ability and the belief that people are smart enough to learn this stuff. Because think about dog training for a moment. If you shock a dog over and over when you're at the dog park to try and teach them things, the dog just basically will give up and say, I'm just going to sit on the ground. I'm not going to do anything because every time I move, I get zapped. That sucks.
Yeah,
right?
it's the term is called learned helplessness. And
there you go.
And that's exactly what happens, right? And another great interjection here, I'm sorry, just real quick, is something called Schofield's definition of discipline, if you ever get a chance to look at it.
Schofield,
basically,
SCO.
Schofield, General Schofield, like Schofield Barracks in Hawaii.
Okay.
It's too many consonants. Don't ask me to spell it. But
Okay.
but the great thing about it, he wrote a treatise once about compliance in the military, right? And all officers at Officer Candidate School have to memorize his definition of discipline. But basically, is that fear and punishment gain immediate compliance, but long-term resentment, and
Bingo.
then and they will work against you as time goes on, right? So exactly what you're saying has been proven by theorists for hundreds of years. Even in the military, we know this, right? So, and why some companies still do it this way, I have no idea.
Right. Well, here's the thing. The entire industry of cybersecurity for 25 years, I've been in this 30 years, but for 25 years has been pushing bigger sticks to stop the clicks, right? That's an old saying. You can sort of memorize it, but the idea is let's punish and stop these really, really dangerous behaviors of clicking on links you shouldn't. And you just gave me yet another analogy of why immediate compliance, people think, oh, that's good. Thank God the temper tantrum has stopped. The dog has not crossed the yard. Oh, God. Oh, okay. We can relax now. No, because there's been no long-term behavior change. Psychologists, and we'll see it on the next slide, actually, as we go forward here. Let's talk for a moment on positive reinforcement. 72 years ago, B.F. Skinner, the godfather of operant conditioning and psychology and cognitive psychology, he basically said, I'm paraphrasing, but the shortest version of it is reinforced behaviors are repeated, right? Even when I was in college, I did a rat study where the rat pressed the lever, got a pellet of food. And so he would press the lever and get a pellet of food. And that's a 1-for-1. And that's pretty rewarding. And that builds some behavior consistency. But if you really, really, really want to get the rat to press that button a lot, stop giving it a pellet every single time they press it. Give it an intermittent reward schedule. And what have we just created? A slot machine for rats. And they will pet that thing all day long, never knowing when the next pellet's coming, but eventually it gets one and it's rewarded. But that is positive reinforcement. So tell me, let's talk about some of the characteristics of positive reinforcement. It basically rewarding good behaviors, recognizing and encouraging the behaviors you want to see more of, especially around security best practices. That's very helpful. Teaching and positive reinforcement with a supportive education builds lasting habits. And this is important, deeper understanding, right? That understanding, right? There's a Bloom's taxonomy for those that are interested. Go look that up. It says, well, you can learn something, right? Like I used to memorize the anatomy of a frog to pass that biology exam, but I didn't understand it. I only memorized it. I knew the answers. But then the next level up is understanding it, right? But if you understood it, could you teach it? You're a teacher, Dr. Edwards. I'll use your formal title. You have to know a material much deeper to teach it. There's a couple of books I've read in my lifetime that says if you want to really, really understand a topic, go to try and teach it, because then you have to break it down into its component parts and you have to understand how they all interrelate, and you have to then synthesize that in a way that you can communicate it to others. And that gets you to the deepest level of understanding, kind of the sensei of a topic. So that's what teaching in positive reinforcement in a supportive environment can build you further along. Now, I'm not saying you'll teach people how to teach it, but you'll teach them a deeper understanding and knowledge of it when you use positive reinforcement. And then another area to keep in mind, and this is one that's often forgotten, is to celebrate and recognize publicly within our businesses, within our organizations. If you're a CISO, build a positive reinforcement public loop that says when people report a phish and they're accurate, let everyone else know. Hey, look, John reported this phish. It's really a good one. Look at how devious it is, but he wasn't fooled. We don't want anybody else to be fooled, for we're sharing it with you. But boy, does John walk around the office that day like the hero, because he is a hero. He found something that could have devastated a company and reported it. So celebrate progress, create momentum, employee engagement, confidence that they're doing the right thing. You'll build your culture very, very well if you follow these things. Questions or any comments?
No, Going back to one thing too, and this is another Armyism, we
Hmm.
teach junior NCOs this way. So for example, many, many years ago when I was a junior NCO, I got given a class and it was like, I know nothing about this, Sergeant. He's like, I know. It's like, that's why you're going to teach it. And it's just, a lot of times it's that stress of, oh my God, I got to teach something. I'm becoming really good at it. But it was an amazing learning experience because suddenly I became the expert on whatever that topic was at the time, which I think was the M249 machine gun. But I don't know if I can remember
Yeah,
it that far, but yeah, no,
that's
this is
amazing.
exactly tracking with what some of the best systems, educational systems in the world are doing, right?
Right.
What you should be doing.
If we were to pause this for a moment and sort of summarize what has happened, and by the way, my company Cyberhoot, I'm the CEO of it. We've taken the psychology, the educational best practices, and the cybersecurity best practice. We've combined them into the platform. We have created a SAT platform that leverages all these things, and we produce materials to help remind you, go reward your employees for reporting things. But if you look at the Venn diagram, the center of what we've produced, Cyberhoot, is the best practices from psychology, education, cybersecurity, and shared with the employees in a positive way, a gamified way. All of this is designed really to reach the threat we're about to face with this agentic AI agents creating these one-for-one phishing emails to your employees. So I think we're well positioned to help. So let's talk about the next phase of this, right? We know that phishing and positive reinforcement need to be combined, but what are all the best practices from a cybersecurity perspective? We've talked about the best practices from the military. You brought those up, from psychology, from education, to get knowledge, understanding, and behavior change in our employees. Well, these are some of the cybersecurity best practices around awareness. Don't do a once a year 4-hour afternoon of cybersecurity training. Let me put that into real context for you. If you went to the gym in January because your New Year's resolution was to get fit, and you spent 4 hours working every part of your body out on every machine there because you were committed to getting fit, you would give up the next day because every ounce of your body, every inch would hurt and possibly be injured, right? So you wouldn't go back. So what do experts in physical fitness suggest? They say something called HIIT, high intensity interval training, 3 to 5 minutes, once a day. Or I know the military does this, right? Start your day with 50 push-ups and 50 sit-ups or whatever it is. And that's HIIT. But we need to do it in cybersecurity. Bite-sized lessons, 3 to 5 minutes, once a month on a video topic, on a phishing simulation. And believe it or not, that's sufficient to create awareness and a culture, and then rewarding it and doing some other things you're about to see is so much better than a 45-minute video. I don't know anyone that can sit still for a 45-minute video that isn't a Hollywood studio, nail biter with a lot of action. And that creates habits. If you read books around breaking bad habits or creating new habits, you have to consistently practice it for a series of times. And then all of a sudden it's a habit and you've got a new good habit to replace the bad habit or what have you. But track your progress to build those habits. Gamify the experiences to get engagement. We have in our platform, Jason, we have a leaderboard and friends that you can compete with on your cyber literacy journey. And as you complete assignments, if you get them done on time and if you get perfect answers, you get more points and your avatar grows and you can see your leaderboard where you sit in the company. Now, the full leaderboard's anonymous, but you say, okay, Jason, you're at spot 3 out of 50 because you've done everything on time and almost perfect and you've done all your times. That. And so it's a way to create this engagement. I know I heard one CEO said, I was at the bottom of the leaderboard and I decided to do something about it. And I climbed up to about halfway because I was late on my assignments, but I got everything done and I got great 100% accurate answers. And I was able to move myself up. And it was the gamification that encouraged that behavior because they didn't want to be seen as the laggard. And then celebrate those safe actions that you're trying to get more of. When people report a suspicious email, give them call them out on all hands calls, call them out on team meetings, build success in this area. And it builds confidence and encourages a culture of everyone's responsible for cybersecurity. You know, when I got into this field 25 years ago, they said, I'd talk to leaders and I'd say, you need a CISO on this organization to do this. And you go, no, my IT guy's in charge of all the security. If something breaks, it's his fault or her fault, right? Not so much anymore. Everyone has to be responsible for this. Now, the last bullet here, this one is a little bit nuanced. And I think those listening to this podcast or watching it will really understand this when I explain it. In traditional fake email gotcha phishing attacks, you're sending a message that's been crafted in some company's tool, let's say Cyberhood or KnowBe4 or any of the vendors out there, and you're sending it through the email delivery mechanisms called SMTP, port 25, or there's a secure port 636, I think, and it's delivered to the inboxes of someone else. Now, that person receiving it can take one action that can disassemble the whole delivery mechanism and report it as spam. And if it's reported as spam, the domain name that you use to deliver that from, it was probably typo squatted in some fashion. It cannot be very closely aligned to the vendor you're impersonating. And I'll tell you what happened to us at Cyberhood. 3 times we got cease and desist legal letters that said, stop impersonating us. The IRS, Facebook, Meta, and Zoom, we had created typo squatted domain names in our attack phishing emails that were just too close to the vendor's name. One person out of the 100,000s of people that we train each month reported it as spam. That got sent to the vendor, and their legal team has an automated process that says, hey, Cyberhood, we don't care if you're a SAT vendor. You can't impersonate us. Stop doing it. So what happened, and this is, if we go back to that early study from 2021, the University of Zurich, and it said, when you test people with super dumbed down domain names, they actually will click more on real attacks because the domain names are typo squatted. An M in Microsoft or Amazon will be turned into an R and an N by the hackers, and they'll have access to deliver phishing emails from rnmicrosoft.com or something similar to that, or amazon.com. And the individuals have been trained to look for domain names that are like accountresetsorus.com for a Microsoft MFA reset email, right? It's so obviously not tied to the vendor that individuals become overconfident in their abilities, because the dumbing down of the domain names to battle against these legal issues of sending emails over the internet with a domain name too close to the vendor has made the test itself inaccurate. It doesn't work. It doesn't teach you what you need to know, right? So you have to have realistic practices. And what do you do? How do you get realistic practices? Is you take the simulation, phishing simulations out of email entirely, and you put them in a browser. And that's what we do. We have a web browser. You visit the site branded for your MSP or your company, and it walks you through 6 or 7 questions on a fictitious email saying, okay, here's a real live email that you might receive from a hacker. And your job is to label these 6 or 7 components of the email, think of them as puzzle pieces, as safe or suspicious. And we start with the sender. And we've got rnmicrosoft.com on a MFA reset email, and the user will often fail it the first time. And then we spell out the mistake, and we say, look at the letters carefully, because the M has been turned into an R and an N. And people's minds are blown. We get feedback. You can give us a thumbs up, down, and they get this feedback like, oh my God, I never knew that was possible. Oh my goodness. So realistic practice is a very important cybersecurity best practice. So let's talk about AI, agentic AI, human knowledge, and who's going to win this battle, right? Because we know AI makes phishing smarter, and agentic AI makes it smarter, faster, stronger, more specific to individuals. So sophisticated attacks with artificial intelligence are going to get more personalized. They're going to come with greater frequency. And the impact, if they succeed, is going to be even worse, right? We've heard about double, what do you call it? Double, when a ransomware event happens and they encrypt your files. Thank you. The single extortion is the data has been encrypted, and you need to pay for the key to decrypt it. The double extortion is an advancement on that's been around for 5 or 6 years, 10 years now, where they exfiltrate your sensitive data and threaten to release it online if you don't pay the ransom, because you have good backups, right? Everyone listening to this, I know, has great backups with a 3-2-1 backup methodology, 3 copies on 2 different mediums. One is offline and immutable, right? So you can back up and you can get back up and running. But then if your data is shared with the public, oh my God, if you're an accounting firm and your tax files have been shared for all your clients online, you're dead. You're dead in the water. Or a law firm whose, legal briefs and all that are exposed. Oh my God, it's terrible. Well, there's triple extortion now. Did you know that? In fact, there's quadruple extortion.
Yeah,
the triple extortion.
Yeah.
What's that?
Vistamo, the Swedish company that did child health records, had a triple extortion attack. Yeah, a couple of years ago.
The one that I'm familiar with was in the US, where an FTC regulated financial firm didn't report their breach to the FTC. And the hacker said, well, listen, you haven't paid us for the data to get it back from the encryption. You haven't budged on the release of sensitive information online. We're going to tell the FTC, and you're going to pay fines now if you don't give us the ransom, or we can keep quiet. It's your choice, right? And then the latest one, the fourth one, I have an ethical reason why I can't share it with you, but you and I will talk afterwards. But there's a fourth way hackers are really deviously trying to extort things, and I'll tell you offline. But it's really a bad situation. Can humans outthink AI? Well, humans have this really interesting thing called intuition and contextual awareness, right? And I mentioned to you earlier, you and I both like hockey. If we got a hockey email out of the blue, and we know we're talking about it on podcasts and things like that, maybe we would be, that seems a little unusual. I would get this perfectly, crafted email about something I spoke about recently. Well, we have the intuition and contextual awareness that AI cannot replicate. So we could probably look at that and say, something's not right here. Let's take a closer look. And then the muscle memory of high intensity interval trainings on phishing simulations that we've been practicing so many times would just give us muscle memory to go look at the center. Oh, look at that. What a devious little domain name. How interesting. So together, these things can provide the best protection. But this is more than just teaching humans how to outthink phishing attacks. We're actually talking about the article from Anthropic. So let me bring it full circle. If hackers are going to use agentic AI agents to attack us, Anthropic said we also need to start developing agentic AI defensive mechanisms. So building agentic AI into our endpoint detection and response to tease out that one needle in the haystack, into our SOC analyst solutions so that they can monitor for the amount of traffic has gone up through the roof. How are we going to pick out that needle in the haystack? We need an agentic AI agent to look at the logs from our firewalls, to look at the unpatched systems, to look at the XDR alerts and say, oh my God, there's a common theme here. We have one thing that's gone through all 3 of these things. Create a red alert. We've got an attacker on our hands here, right? So we need to do that plus the human training to prevent the initial breach and go from there. So my last slide is key leadership takeaways for people watching this, or I could say key, takeaways for cybersecurity professionals, for CISOs, CIOs, CTOs. Agentic AI has changed our landscape. We've had this you can't go back moment. If they jailbroke it once, they're going to jailbreak it again, and they're going to use DeepSeek, I think, is the Chinese equivalent. They'll be using that instead if they can't jailbreak our own. And it's created and run multi-stage attacks that begin with advanced customized phishing attacks and emails. So the landscape has changed. We need to do something. We need to up our game, essentially. And positive reinforcement. We need to change the default behavior of more sticks for clicks in this cybersecurity industry and move towards a positive reinforcement, rewarding positive behaviors, educating and engaging with our employees in ways that doesn't alienate them. And to your point, get people give up and shut down and resent in the long run. That's what fake email gotcha phishing does. It creates this disengagement and disincentive to participate. And then finally, we need to push our vendors of cybersecurity tools to up their game, to use AI and agentic AIs to help identify these attacks as they're happening, whether it's a automated tool doing port scanning and pen testing and running vulnerability exploits, or password hacking and breaching and collection, or phishing attacks that have gotten really, really good. So that's the phishing in the days, the agentic AI. I'm happy to take questions in our forum as we go forward. You can ask. You can go to cyberhoot.com for more information, or to book a demo, or download our white papers. We have a very advanced white paper that talks about all the psychology and educational best practices and the problems that we've had as an industry in cybersecurity of fake email phishing, what we call attack phish and gotcha phishing. What's interesting to me, Dr. Edwards, is there a place in anyone's cybersecurity program for attack phishing? Yes, there is. But not on the first day of your semester-long class on, say, I'm using an analogy here, but on genetics. Let's say you're a teacher, and on day one, all the students come in, you say, put your books away. Here's a test. I'm going to give you your final exam so I can see how little you all know, and you're going to fail it. That's what an attack phish on day one does, right? It gets you this high baseline of all the failures, and then it shows improvement over time because, hey, look everyone clicked at this rate. Now they're down to this rate. But it's a very negative experience that breeds resentment. Instead, you should follow the educational best practices of saying, let's teach you the materials, but it's okay to have a final exam or a midterm and a final exam. So run that attack phish or that gotcha phish once a year, twice a year max, to measure if your employees are learning what they need to know to defend the entity, to defend the organization. So yes, there is a possibility there. For that. So that's it. That's my chat. I hope that was helpful.
No, that was awesome. I really liked it, Craig, too. I think, and it reinforces a lot of themes that good leaders know, right? You know what I mean? Which is don't build resentment, build education, build, confidence, especially in an area where they know they're going to make mistakes, right? I had an incident once as a CISO a long time ago where accounts payable clerk clicked an ADP invoice that was ransomware. And,
oh boy,
and this is way back, like 2017, maybe, back in the day. And the ransomware is relatively simple compared to today's stuff. You can reverse it pretty quickly back then. But the CEO, he called me in and he's like, should we fire this person? I'm like, you have not approved any training for these people. I was like, I'm surprised it has not happened a lot more than now. I was like, if you remember our conversation, we had this a while back. I said, we need to train them. We need to do this, or this stuff's going to happen. And the finance department lost about 4 hours of work, but it took us to restore that, that file server and some other stuff that had to go on and clean and do the stuff out there. But, it was one of those where, and the question was there going to be any punishment? No, we're not going to punish anybody because of this, because now you're going to breed this culture of fear in everybody. And to be fair, and we looked at the situation, right, was every day she got ADP invoices by email. That's what she did every day. And every day was a PDF, and every day was the same name, and every was, from different people. And she would open it, look at the invoice, make a decision. She was an accounts payable clerk, right? And so all they did was just, learn that behavior at other places, and she did what she did, right? Her job was accounts payable clerk, not cybersecurity. You've got to break into that somehow and get them to learn outside of it. But yeah, you can't do it with fear. I detest any organization that does it through fear.
Well, I'll go one further and say, show me an organization that fires people over clicks on phishing emails, and you're going to have a company that will go out of business at some future date, because the resentment will build and build and build. It's just not the way to do it. And psychology knows this, education knows this, the military knows this. When will cybersecurity professionals listening to this stop with the punishment and sticks? Use carrots, use public positive recognition and gamification, and you'll be so much more successful. I promise.
I worked at a corporation, this is years ago, and they sent out a phishing test, and it was which band would you like for the Christmas party, right? And one of them was a specific band, And so everybody fell for it. Like, oh, yeah, they're going to
Mhm.
ask us about the Christmas party, right? It was kind of a funny thing, right? Well, what turned it around was even better was, the next year, that was the ban for the Christmas party. They were like, obviously we got some good insight. Marketing was like, we're not giving this up. This is data. You know what I mean? So we
That's
all got
right.
that banned next year. And what was funny though is the following year when they sent out the email to get your ticket, it was an external email and nobody clicked it.
Right.
So the CISO had to go out and put out an email. Hey, this is an okay email. You can click this email, right? Because like
Right.
0 participation across the company to sign up for the Christmas party. So
But you know what's interesting about that story is that the company maybe stopped sending out, or maybe didn't. I don't know. Maybe back then there wasn't a better answer. But what it tells me is that people are not learning how to identify a phishing email properly, right? If
right.
that ticket came in on a Ticketmaster link and it was actually Ticketmaster and it was a legitimate thing, and you did one iota of research that it was all legitimate, then you should be able to click on that. But if it was Ticketmaster with an at sign for the A, or that wouldn't work, right? Let me think. Master, where Ticketmasters with an S on the end, that's a common attack, right? Then you should be able to be taught how to spot that and say, oh, this could be a really big phishing email, and you should report it. And then that should be rewarded, and that should be called out to the rest of the team. Yeah. So we see this over and over again. People go too far on the metronome, right? Like we're doing too many attack fish. We do something else, and they're still missing the boat, which is teaching people the rubric by which they can identify harmful emails. And that's what
Well,
we really excel at.
and the other thing too, right, Craig, is you're not just teaching them to save their business. Like you need to make it a, hey, this is good for the rest of your life thing you need to learn, right? Because
Mhm.
this has happened to my family. This has happened to people I know where they've gotten things that, like the typical scammer, hey, we're from LifeLock and you need to call us now because your account's being set. Teaching them that at work. It like, for example, one of the things I do and I teach cyber safety every once in a while is I'll talk about, hey, how to protect your checking account, your personal
Right.
checking account. Throw
Mhm.
that into your work training. And then they learn something they can take home with them, not just, oh, it's another boring cybersecurity class I got to go to,
Mhm.
which is only
Right.
going to be about not putting my password on Post-it notes on my monitor at work. Well, no, let's talk about personal password managers that this can help you and your family out for your life. That breeds, a whole bunch of like just good feelings, towards the company when you're like, hey, it's not just here, but we're trying to help you outside the company as well.
Right. You're absolutely right. I have a little phrase I use. It helps you personally and professionally when you learn these skill sets, right? Cyber literacy applies to our families as much as it applies to our workplace. And companies that talk about the cost of delivering cyber awareness training and phishing simulations fail to realize it's a benefit to your employees when it's couched in the right terms and with the right messaging, that this helps you all personally and professionally, right? I had someone stop me in the streets here in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where I have many, many clients. They said, "Hey, Craig, I, I think I promise you, I would have clicked on this email in my Yahoo inbox a month ago, but I did your hoot fish, and I saw the urgency of the email, and it got my hair standing up on end, and I looked a little closer, and I identified it was a fish, and I didn't do it. But I think I would have clicked on it a month ago. Thank you for giving me the personal knowledge I needed to be successful and confident online." That's the other thing. Efficiency is improved too. I've had people stress about an email, not knowing how to tell if it's safe or unsafe for 45 minutes before they escalated and asked the question in a business I was supporting not too long ago. And that's an inefficiency that you can't afford as a business, right? You need people to
Right.
be able to make the decision like that. This is unsafe. Look at, there's a typo squatting in the name. There's a period in the wrong place. There's an S on this domain. And then you have much more efficient, confident, secure business employees.
And you just don't realize, how many businesses out there still don't mark external email.
Mhm.
It just
Yeah.
kills me to this day that that's not a basic thing. Like, hey, this is from outside the company. Pay attention. You know,
Mhm.
it's but yeah. So awesome, Craig. Look, I really thank you for coming today. I appreciate it. And everybody, the links for Craig's business will be here in the chat as well. And
Mhm.
Craig and I will be able to answer questions. This will also come out in tomorrow's newsletter. We'll be able to answer questions there too. And again, for any and all these needs, I would totally recommend getting with Craig and Cyberhoot for all your needs for this.
Thank you very much. And one last thing, Jason, we give Cyberhood away free to individuals. We're not going to charge anyone an individual registration fee. You can sign up for free and get our patent pending phishing simulation, which is the positive in the browser thing that doesn't trick you or anything. It just explains the rubric you need to use to apply to your personal and professional email. Just go to cyberhood.com/individuals. And if you really like it, bring it to your IT guy or your MSP and have them sign up for it, and we'll bring it to everyone.
That's cool. That's a great service, Craig. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks again, Craig. Have a great day. So everybody, that wraps up this cyber talk on agentic AI and phishing, which was an amazing talk with Craig, a person very, very knowledgeable about it. And just a huge thank you for Craig for sharing his 3 decades of hard-won experience. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone else in the industry. Also, remember the Cyberhoot, you can sign up individually, which is a great little bonus for anybody in your professional sphere or friends or family. I would totally recommend it. And if you'd like to be featured on a future Cyber Talk, you or your business, please reach out to me either through the page or at baremetalcyber.com or through me here on LinkedIn with me. So thanks for watching, and you guys have a great evening, great afternoon.